Hello and welcome to Lesson 3 in conducting the backwards pass in a PDM diagram in this course of Scheduling Fundamentals. In today's lesson, we're going to continue going over the PDM diagram, and in this lesson, we'll go over how to conduct the backwards pass, and I'll show you how to calculate total float now that we've completed the forward pass in the previous lesson. So let's dive in and get started. Now that we've finished conducting the forward pass, we're now ready to go over and conduct the backwards pass, so that way we can calculate our late start and late finish for each activity. Once we complete this step, we'll be able to figure out our critical path or our longest path for our schedule and the total float for each activity. To conduct the backwards pass, we need to start over on the very far right-hand side of the diagram this time at the last activity, 108, and work our way back over to the first activity, 100. The first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to move the total duration up from the early finish to the late finish on activity 108, so that way they both are showing the same finish date. We do this because our project is supposed to finish in 50 days, and our project can't finish any later than what we've planned, which means that both the late finish and early finish on the last activity in our diagram should finish on the same day. So now, in order to go through and conduct a backwards pass, we'll need to subtract the duration of this activity, 108, and then add 1 day to get the duration of the late start of this activity. And in this case, this will equal 41 days. In the forward pass, we were subtracting a day as we moved through the PDM diagram, but in the backwards pass, we're actually adding a day, because remember, that day counts as a full day of work, and if we don't subtract that day, then our calculations will be off. So now, as you can see, the late start and early start match up, and the late finish and early finish are matching up. This means that the activity actually has zero float, or no room to move, and it's on our critical path, or our longest path, to completing the project. This gives this activity priority over non-critical work. Activities with no float will actually push out the project completion date if they're not finished on time, which is why they are critical. To calculate total float, we'll need to subtract the early finish from the late finish, or the early start from the late start. To save you some time when you're going through this process, you'll need to calculate one area, either the late finish minus the early finish, or the late start minus the early start. If the late finish has zero float, then so does the late start, as you'll go through and you'll see in this demonstration. The next step after that is we actually need to subtract 1 day from the late start of this activity, the successor activity, and then enter it into our predecessor or predecessor activities. And in this case, it's activities 106, 107, and 103. And in that case, it'll actually come out to be 40 days. Now we will subtract the activity duration again from the late finish and then add 1 day to calculate the late start. So as you can see for activities 106 and 107, for 106 that would be 36 days, and activity 107 it'd be 31 days. Once again, if we calculate our total float now that we have activity, like for our both activities 106 and 107, we can see for activity 106 it has 10 days of float, or it can start 10 days later from its early start, and it won't affect the project. And as we can see over here for activity 107, it has zero float. This means that activity 107 is on our critical path and 106 is not. We will go through and repeat this process until we get back to activity 100, always subtracting 1 day from the late start of the successor activity, then putting it into the late finish of its predecessor, then subtracting the duration, and then adding 1 day. In the event of activity 104, we can see that it actually has two relationships, but this time we're actually going to take the smaller number, and it'll come out to 30 from activity 107 as opposed to activity 106, because that's the latest an activity can finish, or this activity can finish, without pushing out its successor 107. And if we know 107 is on the critical path, that means that 104 must finish on the 30th day, not the 36th. In the forward pass, we go through and take the larger number, but when we go through and do the backwards pass, we're actually going to take the smaller number. This is also true for activity 101 as well. We're actually going to take the smaller number, take it in at 20, and then again between activities 101, 102, and 103, we'll take the smallest number back into activity 100. So now we can see the late finish for activity 100 is actually showing 10 days. So we know that we've done this process correctly because our total float is showing 0 days. And now we can see, if we go through this, we can see our critical path for our project. We can see all the activities that have 0 float, and that if any of these activities are actually delayed, they'll actually push out our project or original plan of 50 days. So that's actually how we go through and conduct the backwards pass and calculate total float. So that concludes this lesson on conducting the backwards pass on a PDM diagram and calculating total float here using scheduling fundamentals. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next lesson. And for more information on CPM scheduling and Primavera P6 Professional, please visit bmhscheduling.com. Thanks for watching.